This is the Dodcast. I'm your host, Nathaniel Dodson. In today's podcast, I sat down with the powerful and legendary Dr. Americus Reed II. I met Americus a number of years ago when he hired me to shoot a series of photos for his own personal brand, and very quickly found myself fascinated with this professor who, when compared with other professors, is best described as a bit different in all the right ways. In this podcast, Americus and I will talk about doing the right research as you develop your brand, how he teaches his students, and how they respond. We talk about the challenges of modern branding in this socially aware environment. We chat about TED Talks, YouTube Red, men versus women, black versus white, what my own dad brand is, some of our greatest fears and phobias, and somehow slavery even gets mentioned. We talk about all this and much more on this, the 4th episode of the Dodcast. All right, cool. All right, welcome into the Dodcast. It's my podcast where I talk about things that I'm interested in with people who are far cooler than myself in many cases, such as this, more good-looking, more physically fit, and more intelligent as well. Dr. Americus Reed, thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be here, man. Thanks for that intro. I'm feeling like really good now. Maybe I'll hire you for PR.
Yeah, well, if I have time.
Right.
You work here at Wharton School of Business.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, you're not yet a household name. So I feel like we have to explain a little bit of what you do here.
Okay.
You are you're a professor here at Wharton. You've been here for...
This is my 18th year.
18th years.
Yes.
That's almost... yeah, that's a while. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah.
What do you do here?
So I do a couple things here. One of the things I do here that's very important is I do research under the Wharton brand. So one of the things...
More than like running a Google search kind of research.
Yeah.
Because that's my flavor of research.
Yeah, but my flavor of research is a little bit different than Nathaniel. My flavor of research is thinking about science and how science can inform managers and public policy folks about how to do stuff. And so we do a lot of research here as well. I do two other things. I do a lot of teaching here as well in the classes that I teach in that context as well. And then I do a lot of outside stuff with companies to try to bring my research to them to help them do better in the business place and in the marketplace as well.
So very hands-on. Take the theoretical stuff.
Yes.
Push it out into the market.
Yeah.
Here's how it works.
That's part of the Wharton brand. Part of the Wharton brand is really to say, we want to get out of the ivory tower and all this pontificating about, what is theoretically interesting. We want to definitely have some of that, but we also want to be more applied as well.
Is Wharton School of Business part of University of Pennsylvania?
Yes, it is.
That's how it's a good way to think about it, as sort of a child branch of University of Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Because Penn, I feel like people,
Yes.
it's an Ivy League school, so some people at least are going to kind of know that's what's going on.
That's correct.
In most of the online places I see you I shouldn't say tout yourself because I feel like that has some negative connotation. But
what do you say? You're like Americus. You're like a narcissistic megalomaniac.
No. I didn't finish the sentence. Okay. You tout yourself, or maybe you are touted as a brand identity psychologist.
Brand identity theorist.
Theorist. That's the word I'm looking for. Theorist.
Yes.
What is I'm not that smart. What does that mean in sort of layperson's terms?
Yeah, so a brand identity theorist is a person who is super interested in understanding how brands, products, services, or organizations can become a part of how a person self-identifies. So there are lots of brands out there, if you even think of some of the most iconic brands. What they're really good at is getting you to see their brand as a symbol of identity. And so this notion of when a brand sort of transcends what it does in terms of its features and becomes part of who you are, a brand identity theorist is a person who wants to understand how that process happens, number one, and then number two, how can companies create that kind of connection?
Is that something that is reserved for the status of those big companies? I'm assuming you're talking about companies like Nike, like Apple.
Yeah.
Can the mom and pops, I'll put it to you this way. There are a lot of designers, photographers, people like that. They're going to watch this podcast. There are a lot of people that say, I am, quote unquote, rebranding.
Gotcha.
And maybe what they're doing is redesigning a logo. How could somebody, or what would be advice you would give to somebody like that in terms of, you're doing a new logo for the pizza shop in town, right? Maybe they don't have dreams or aspirations of being a global brand, but I'm sure there's still principles that you could apply.
Yes.
what is some of that stuff? Like whatever it is. I feel like I'm just asking you to throw slop at a wall, but
no, it's actually a critical point, Nathaniel, because what I often tell companies, even the ones that are new to the game, that are startups, is that sometimes there's confusion. Sometimes some of these companies think that a logo is a brand, and a logo is not a brand. A logo is an outward-facing interface with the rest of the world. A brand is a meaning system. And so a brand has to do with, as a company, as a group of individuals who create a product or a service, what do we stand for? And what do we want? What are the values that we want our product to be associated with? That's an important question for any sort of company, whether or not you're Fortune 100 or you're a mom and pop startup trying to establish a connection with your consumers. So it's still relevant.
So black lines is one thing, but when they're made into a swastika,
exactly.
It's a whole different.
It's a whole different thing.
Right.
But sometimes folks get confused because they think that, I just do a label or a logo and I've got a brand, and that's not how this works.
How does that work with? Well, I mean, maybe let me rephrase. There are a lot of companies that get so big, it's like steering a big ship. It's slow and it's this arc, whereas kind of smaller, younger startups are much more agile. They can leap and bound and juke back and forth and duck and tuck and spin and make those critical on-the-fly decisions because they're not sort of bogged down by all that bureaucracy. Right? Yeah. How does a company, if you approach a company with some information about changing their brand, the way people feel about them as a company, what kind of information are you giving them? Be more personal on Facebook? I mean, how scientific? I'm assuming it's much more scientific.
The research there really is where it starts. And what we try to do is we try to diagnose two things. One is, what do current consumers think the brand is? And second, to sort of sub-question to that is, does the companies, what they think they are, does that align with what consumers think they are? And so it's kind of looking for disconnect in that context.
How do you get that info?
Yeah, we talk to them. There's a couple different ways. So now it's becoming a little bit interesting because social media and technology is allowing us to do more fanciful kinds of analyses. What we used to do is more predominantly do surveys and focus groups and qualitative kinds of things, interviews and things of that nature. Now we're more able to go out there and organically understand what they're doing. So there's this big area that's hot right now called social listening. And the idea there is to actually go into the communities online, into the interwebs, as it were, and really try to understand what are people saying and talking about with respect to our brand in their naturalistic environments.
Right, when they don't think they're talking to the company.
Exactly, when they don't think they're talking to the company. And so you're able to pull all that data from various communities and understand how are people talking about your brand in a way that is non-biased. In other words, it's organic. They're talking about it, and then you can pull all that text information down and then do something called linguistic analysis, where you try to pull out themes about how are they speaking about us, what are they saying, what are pain points, all of these things. And you basically take all that information and you use that to create a survey to feed back into these customers, and then you can ask more structured sorts of things and then get at kind of details around what are the thoughts that they have about our brand. And then you sort of start from that as a strategy. How do I, quote, like you were saying, Nathaniel, rebrand?
Right. It's funny. I recently, totally bizarre, but I just remember when you were sitting here explaining this to me. I recently had a company send me a mailer, which old-fashioned way of conducting a survey.
Right.
But the new-fashioned approach was they sent a $5 bill along with it.
Oh, interesting.
Like a crisp, clean. I thought it was fake. The whole reason I opened it was because I'm looking like, is that a real $5? Opened it. I mean, they took it at the store at least when I went and used it.
Interesting.
And I'd never seen anything. Yeah. And they said, if you send the survey back, we'll send you another $5.
Oh, interesting.
And I sent the survey back. I never got the other $5, but I didn't even care. It was just so bizarre and out of the blue that I'm going to send it back just because nobody's ever done that before. That's kind of cool. Yeah. And hey, I'll encourage a company to send free money in the mail.
Totally.
Go for it. Yeah. Make it 20 next time.
Right. The 20 would be much better. That's a pretty good point there. I think that's, we're always struggling, Nathaniel, with how do we incentivize customers to give us information and how do we get them to authentically do it. So that's actually pretty clever. It says, hey, we're just going to compensate you.
I'd never seen it.
We trust you well enough to put $5 in the mail,
right?
And that you're going to do, take that $5. It's actually interesting though, because there's some research there that shows that if you give money away, that you're creating a kind of certain level of obligation that the person feels. So if I take the 5, it's really hard to take the 5 and not do the survey.
Right. I wonder if that's kind of like it messed with my head a little bit.
Yeah, that's part of the strategy. Yeah.
But there definitely was the part of me that was like, I appreciate the outside of the box thinking.
Yeah, totally.
This isn't just, hey, do the survey at the end of every Taco Bell receipt. There's do the survey, you'll be entered online and you have a chance to win, which you know you're never going to win.
Right.
Because some kid in Palo Alto just won it.
That's right. That's right.
You're not seeing that. That's kind of wild.
Yeah, surveys are huge. I was actually just recently in a restaurant that will remain unnamed. And at the end of the meal, the server came up to me and my colleague, we were having dinner, and they said, would you like to fill out a survey? We were like, oh, sure, we're survey guys, we do this stuff. And then they said something really interesting, Nathaniel. They said, if you give us 5 stars, we'll give you a coupon for a free appetizer next time. We were like, what? Like as survey, gurus, or we fancy ourselves survey gurus, we were like incredibly offended by this. And in fact, we stopped the guy and we said, hey, you can't do this. Like, that's totally biased. Yeah. And this person literally said, well, that's our policy. And like, this
your
is the
policy.
Yeah, your policy is to cheat. And it was interesting though, because we looked into it a little bit further, Nathaniel, and what we found was that the franchises are competing for resources. So they need to be able to show that we're doing the best service possible here. So in some senses, they're incentivized to cheat. And that's really interesting because it hurts the customer. It kind of like creates a sort of cheating mentality, and then the brand can be hurt by that because you're not getting authentic, real information about what is the actual level.
If that's a 5-star, what's a 3?
Yeah, exactly. So to your point, Nathaniel, I think that we're trying to ask these. We're trying to collect data. The question becomes like, how do we do it in a way that is as unbiased as is humanly possible?
Where do you draw the line too? Because like Facebook's in all that hot water now with all their data collection.
Hey man,
if you're a company. Let's say you're Nestle, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are groups around Facebook that you can jump into where people are crazy about this or that Nestle product, or you can run a search on Twitter and see what people are saying, or hashtags on Instagram, all kinds of things like that, and see what the organic conversation is.
Yeah.
I guess there's nothing wrong with going and looking at the information. It's all being put out there publicly.
Correct.
And there's nothing saying that anybody's allowed to see this unless you're, let's say, a professor at a university or somebody working on the board of X, Y, or Z company. Mm-hmm. Where do you draw the line, or is there a line there? When they're talking about a specific product, obviously you're not, doxing somebody or finding their phone number, copying their phone calls and duration and everything Facebook was doing, allegedly.
Allegedly, yes. Allegedly. I like the way
for legal purposes, allegedly. For editorial purposes, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting, though, because the Facebook example is fascinating. In some senses, Zuckerberg. Well, here, let me just explain. The Zuck, man. He's in hot water, dude. He's totally in hot water. And what's interesting about this whole thing is that, several years ago, before the advent of social media, it's like when a brand was in crisis, you had a little bit of time to react. Now you don't.
Get your PR statement together, push somebody out.
Exactly.
Press release. Who does a press release anymore?
Yeah, totally. And now people are walking around with cell phones in their pocket, right? So if you're a consumer and you have a cell phone in your pocket, you basically are sort of a part-time journalist, and you're also potentially a consumer vigilante. So it's like you can get in a network and be spreading bad information about a company, brand, product, service very quickly.
Delta just killed my dog. Was it Delta United? I shouldn't say whatever. I don't remember what company it was.
Smear. That's right.
Whatever company it was.
Company,
But there was somebody that they had filmed some guy getting thrown off of a commercial airline.
That was United. United is having some challenges right now.
Yeah, and it was people with cell phones that captured. Now I know one guy was a YouTube prankster. It turned out it was whatever. But there was somebody, and everybody's got a cell phone, so everybody's gonna, like you said,
everybody's gonna jump in. What was interesting about Zuckerberg is that Cambridge Analytica, very scary stuff. Only from the perspective of when you sign up on Facebook, you're signing fine print. Nobody reads this stuff. And
what do you mean by Cambridge Analytica?
That the company that basically took the data.
Okay. I thought you were using a term. Never mind.
No. Yeah. So those guys were able to. So a professor basically came out and said, "Hey, here's a little personality survey. Take the personality survey. It's a game, and you do it." And 300,000 people did it. And what was not realized that the permission was that the 300,000, we get to look at your networks. Whoever's on your network, we get to look at all their information too.
Everything. You've given us everything.
That's how you get to 50 million people exposed in terms of their stuff. So what's interesting about this is
the people in their networks as well.
Yes. Okay. That was the big problem, because when you sign on for the personality game, you're basically agreeing that they can have your information.
You can sign your stuff away.
You can sign your stuff away. Yes, but if Nathaniel is my Facebook friend, they're getting your information, and you didn't take the survey.
Did you take the survey?
I did not.
Okay, I didn't
never
either.
take those games. I never.
Me
But here's the thing: 50 million, right? Out of 300 million people in the United States, you might have gotten your stuff. That's basically whatever that is, right?
My personal philosophy is, if I'm online, somebody's finding out everything about me, and I just don't care.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's just I know the stuff I've been into, and I know the stuff I haven't been into.
Right.
And I'm at least right now, I'm okay. I don't plan on being in a place where I'm not okay.
Right.
But
if you think about it, it's 1/6 chance that your stuff got looked at. Now, I think some people are like, listen, I know to your point, they're like okay with that. They know that Facebook is looking at this stuff.
on a principle level, I hate it. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
I hate it.
Yeah.
I'm just, if I'm going to play the social media game, I understand.
You understand
I don't trust. I mean, come on. I just don't trust a big corporation when it's like the honeypot of all that information you can access is right there.
Right.
I just don't trust it.
Right.
I don't even think my own personal Facebook is private, because I'm just like, if I'm going to be online, here it is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to if I don't want people to know it, I'm not putting it up.
Right.
Now, I saw people extracting information from their Facebook apps where it was like, oh, they tracked all my phone calls for this period of time.
They got your likes.
Right, exactly. They're getting all that information
They got access to your photos, your videos, all your stuff. They can find out your curated self very easily. And what's interesting
I have a burner phone for all my nudes. Don't worry.
There you go. Oh, that's awesome. That's very cool. That's like
next level. Yeah, I try to be a step ahead.
Yeah, right. But what's interesting about the Facebook example, Nathaniel, is that Zuckerberg had to come out and basically convince consumers, hey, listen, it's okay. You can trust us. And Facebook is not a very strongly trusted brand at the moment. What's interesting about this is that Zuckerberg had to come out and say, listen, we're going to protect your data. But what's interesting is like their entire business model is actually based on getting your data and sharing it with people so that they can sell ads and they can do other kinds of things to make money. So he's walking a very fine line here.
And there was those internal memos that I saw too, where they were like, all in the name of whatever. If there's a terrorist attack, if somebody gets killed, if somebody whatever, there's this greater good kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that where it's isn't there a point where there's so much initial damage done? Perfect example. Bill Cosby's up for retrial. If somehow he's totally acquitted, will he ever be able to resurrect his career?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, look at a guy like O.J. Simpson. Whether he was guilty or not, there's certain people who are always going to look at him a certain way.
Totally.
Right? Like you're guilty, OJ, 100% in my eyes.
Totally.
Right? No matter PR-wise, I mean, maybe there's like a PR magician out there who could work some kind of magic.
Right.
But what does a company like Facebook do when there's this initial tsunami?
Right.
Having Zuckerberg, he's not the most personable guy. You've seen the memes where it's like, fellow humans, this is fish. We like to eat fish.
Right.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
That seems like a bad PR move to me, pushing Zuck out.
Yeah. But it's interesting, though, because we now live in a world where, I mean, several years ago, you never really knew who the CEO was, the CMO, the CFO, like all these
Steve Jobs, man. He changed a lot.
He changed a lot. But from that perspective, it's like you could have anonymity in the C-suite and no one really knew what you were doing, what your company was about. Now that's different. It's like consumers are demanding to know, like, what do you stand for? Are you pro-NRA? Are you anti-NRA? What's the deal here? And so now these folks have to literally come out and make a claim about this is what we stand for.
And just to butt in, the sad part about that is you can have a great company that is put in a very unenviable position where it's like, I never wanted to make a political stance about this, but it's like, if we don't boycott or stand up against something, we have a group of people who are going to boycott us.
That's right.
But if we come out and agree with those people, another group of people is going to boycott us.
That's right.
So it's this position where you're going to have to. It is an interesting conundrum.
Yes.
Because I used to know people who'd be like, I won't shop at Walmart because I know their executive believes in this or has to do with that or this or that or the other thing.
That's right.
And I don't know. At the end of the day, I feel like I'm pretty utilitarian, and it's like, if Walmart's there and I need the pants, I'm just gonna go get the stupid thing I need. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then again, if you know a company stands for something that you think is totally egregious, I mean, back in the day, pre-abolition of slavery, I feel like that's an issue that morally, slavery on racial grounds, that's an issue I feel like that morally is big enough where if there was a company that's like, go, let's keep them slaves, boy. That you'd be like, I might go to the sandwich shop next door.
Right, right. So I think the point that you're making.
But that's such a big thing, right? Now, today, it seems like every week there's something.
Yeah. But I think we're living in a climate now where socially and societally, that's just the way it is. You know, the new norm is really, you basically got to come out and state, you know, what do you stand for, and you got to be willing to say, you know what, I'm going to try to attract this group of consumers, but not this other group. And I'm just going to live with my ability to do that and maintain and sustain a company.
Isn't it strange, though? Because back in the day, and by back in the day, I mean just a couple years ago, you attracted a certain level of people or your consumer based upon the product or service or brand, the personnel. I guess what you're saying is the social and political stance of a company is now becoming ingrained in the brand of the company.
Absolutely.
We know that that's a quote-unquote socially aware company, let's say.
Yes. And when you think about it, you know, this might be the difference. So if you have two brands, both of them are equally providing pretty much the same thing in terms of the features, pretty much the same price. The differentiating, the thing that might be the difference in choosing one of these brands over the other might be the fact that I believe this other brand is aligned with who I think I am and my values. So it's a way to differentiate yourself, in addition to what you're saying, Nathaniel, to also kind of create additional nuance and DNA of the brand to build that in. And there's different camps. There's some camps that say, listen, you ought to keep values out of economics. There's other camps that say, you know, there's a moral imperative that you actually have to basically communicate to consumers what you stand for. So it's different modes of thought.
I definitely feel like I'm more of an ideologue myself. So I can understand that position where it's, I kind of want to know what you stand for, but at the end of the day, it does also feel a little unfair to the company.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what I mean? Because it's like if you create the absolute best product or offer the best service, and just like if there was no such thing as politics, we could get along perfectly.
Right.
And I'm so kind to every customer that walks my door, regardless of who it is, what they believe, yada, yada, yada. Yet because I'm saying personally I adhere to X, Y, or Z, this group of people is going to be like, nope. No bueno, not doing business with you.
Yeah.
It's bizarre on one hand, but yeah, like it is, I guess it makes sense, but it seems unfair.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that, you know, companies can make a decision if they think that this is a game they want to play. If they want to get involved with a moral argument in addition to an economic argument, I guess that's their prerogative.
What kind of stuff do you teach kids that come in here?
So I could teach a couple classes. I teach marketing strategy. I teach intro to marketing. I teach a class called consumer behavior, which is basically applied psychology to understand why consumers do what they do.
Lots of Facebook group research.
Lots of Facebook group stuff. Yeah, I mean, the Zuckerberg stuff is huge because now this is really sort of telling us, you know, that we can actually, instead of having to rely on what people report on a survey, we can actually just see, well, what are they doing?
Yeah,
and that's really nice.
real.
For real.
It's and like so, in the SEO world, you could hire people who would create these hot maps over your website, so you could see, oh, they hovered the mouse button over this button looking for something, but they didn't even know what to say to us when we would have asked them for information. But because we have this hot map, we can see really what's going on in their head.
That's right. It's very CSI. I love it because it's like really trying to diagnose things. So that class is really
it's a good part of 1984, maybe.
Yeah, right.
As long as it's used ethically.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Because and I want to see ads on Instagram that I'm actually interested in.
Yeah.
I don't need an ad for women's underwear, or for you know a new suede cover for my car seat. Right. I mean, maybe now that I have kids, maybe I do. But you know what I'm saying? Like I want to see that new camera thing, or I want to see that email marketing application, or I want to see this or that. There's things that are me. I don't need a new set of skis.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes. It's very interesting too because people are complaining about the algorithms that are driving a lot of the ads that get shot to you. For example, on Facebook and even YouTube now. I remember the very first time a colleague said, "Hey man, you check out this YouTube thing," like several years ago, and I was like, "What is this?" And I spent like 30 hours on YouTube, like looking up every old commercial that I remember from my childhood, the whole bit. And now I look at it now, it's like the ads are everywhere. And it's like, I'm this close to saying, you know what? I might be willing to actually pay for no ads.
YouTube, get it.
Yeah.
YouTube Red is so
good. Oh, is it good? Okay.
It's so good.
Yeah,
But not only that, I got YouTube Red.
How much does it cost?
It's like $9 a month.
Okay.
It's nothing. I mean, it's not nothing, but it's nothing. It's 2 cups of coffee from Starbucks if you buy that overpriced stuff.
Well, come on, man. Tell us what you really think. Don't sugarcoat it now.
Yeah. So unless Starbucks sponsors the show, in which case, greatest coffee.
The greatest coffee ever.
Actually, I don't drink coffee, so I don't think I would ever have a coffee sponsor. But it's like $9 a month. You not getting the ads is for me only the tip of the iceberg. They have a whole library of original content, which for the most part is kind of not that good.
Okay,
it's crap.
Okay,
to be honest.
Okay.
But the whole reason I get it is because when you watch somebody's videos with a YouTube Red subscription, that creator makes more money off of your view.
Oh.
And I think it's like 3 times more.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Now, that's
so for me, when I
interesting.
heard that, I was like, this is my community, man.
Yeah,
so
they
I'm
should.
I'm going to put money into it.
They should actually, bring that out, call that out.
It would
I
be
didn't
nice.
know that.
Yeah,
because that would resonate with me too.
Yeah, because there are a lot of creators where it's so not only you're not seeing the ad, or in some cases, some videos, ad after ad after ad after ad.
Man.
But the feeling of going from a computer with YouTube Red to somebody else's YouTube account where they still they don't have YouTube Red, and you're like, you got to sit through a 30-second ad.
Yeah.
It's crazy because you sit through 5 minutes of commercials for anything you're going to put on TV.
Yeah.
But there's that expectation online that like now.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But YouTube Red is great.
I got to check it out. I'm this close because I'm like, I can skip the ad. I'm fine with that. It's a little annoying, and
It's still that 5 second. That 5 seconds feels like an eternity.
It does,
especially having.
And
YouTube
then they have
Red.
the 15-second one that they force you through, like you're saying.
Yeah.
But then, but see, here's the problem. They taught me that it's free. So they have trained me that I shouldn't be paying for this.
That's part of YouTube's brand, so to speak.
Yeah.
And
now they want money. So it's like I'm
YouTube
at that
is
level.
free, but YouTube Red, it's plush. It's a beautiful. It's like the Elysian fields.
Okay. I gotta check out the Elysian
When you go through the
fields.
gates.
Yeah, nice. Yeah,
when
I'm
you
ready
go
for this.
through the gates, you don't look back. It is.
Does it look different, or is it
doesn't-
just
no, it
YouTube
doesn't. I mean,
without
it's
the
just,
ads?
you just feel better about it.
Interesting.
You watch a YouTube video, but there's a little thing in your heart that says, I'm a little happier.
Interesting.
Well, maybe for me because I'm a
$9.
creator, but
Yeah.
it's, I mean, I can see how many YouTube Red watches I get as opposed to my regular watches.
Oh, interesting.
And I don't think it contributes that much more. But
Gotcha.
again, the ideologue part of me is like, on the principle, I would, I would like to do it. I try to support some of the creators that I'm able to support.
Yeah.
And especially people whose stuff that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
And then it's like the fact that I don't have to see an ad in front of it. It's like, hey,
It's nice.
gravy.
It's very, very nice. But so we do some of that analytics. How do we use psychology in that particular class, customer analysis, consumer behavior, and basically marketing is an applied discipline. So in marketing, what we do is basically take the best of sociology, psychology, cognitive psychology, ethnography, economics. We take all these things and we try to apply them to consumers. How we can better, serve consumers and understand their needs and stuff.
So over the course of a semester, how does that class break down? Because there's a lot of abstract stuff, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
you have to kind of build some sort of framework so people have, they can understand or have some frame of reference.
Yes.
How does that look or how does that work? Like, what's the first day of class like?
Well, the first day of class, I got to scare them off. So, I'm coming in a little bit of a little bit.
Real quick, just as a quick aside, I found you on ratemyprofessor.com.
Oh, okay.
Very highly rated.
Okay.
However, there was one 1-star review. It was
Okay.
like the red face. And it was like, I think the review was just like awful or something like that. However, it was the very first review. It was like back in 2013. And
interesting.
every review since then has been like 4 to 5.
That's interesting.
Nothing negative after that. So I was like,
Interesting.
that's what getting better at your job looks like.
Yeah, no, Rate My Professor is an interesting platform, right? Because it is sort of like separated
It
from
seems
other
very
stuff.
anonymous, though.
Yeah, which is
Just always like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. The class is extremely well received. We in this customer analysis class, there's 4 things, and it's what we refer to as STPM.
Okay.
STPM stands for segmentation, targeting, positioning, messaging. That's all marketing is. Segmentation, targeting, positioning, messaging. That's all you're doing in marketing.
Are you segmenting your potential audience?
Yeah.
Or are you segmenting your own company?
Well, it could be both. So it depends on like the focus of the particular
like
thing that you're
Cabela
doing.
is our hunting department versus golf, maybe
For sure.
2
Yeah.
100% different demographics.
Totally different. And so, the entire class is organized around those 4 things. And we basically just walk through those 4 things. And at the end of the day, we apply those 4 things to a real world example.
that's cool.
A company that comes in that wants to work with the students.
So you get a new company every
semester.
Is it every semester?
Yeah.
What kind of companies are you working with?
So we've done a lot of stuff. We've done stuff with Nike. We've done stuff with Microsoft. We've done some big companies that try to come in with a mission critical thing. And it's interesting. Right now we're doing a small startup that is called Flavonaturals. And so they're interesting. There's 2 Wharton grads, and they basically started a chocolate company so they created a chocolate bar in an unsweetened powdered mix that is super high on this thing called cocoa flavanols. And so it turns out that there's a science behind this particular antioxidant. And if you take between 500 to 1,000 milligrams of this stuff a day, there's all these documented clinical benefits that are in the scientific literature about arterial blood flow, brain function, skin, all this kind of stuff. So they were like, we're going to create a dark chocolate bar.
I was going to say, it always seems dark chocolate. I always hear people saying like antioxidant dark chocolate.
Yeah. But this is interesting because their Flavonaturals, that's the brand, Flavonaturals, is the only chocolate bar that you can get that has like 500 milligrams of this thing. And they spent 3 years trying to be able to do that, but make it not taste terrible.
Right.
And so
that's a key, I found.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, as workout guys, you know, we have a certain tolerance for bad tasting
I consider myself kind of an ex-workout guy. I've gained 30 pounds in the last 3 years.
Oh, is that right? Interesting.
Yeah. And it's not all muscle. In fact, I would say none of it's muscle.
Interesting. Yeah, it's hard, right? But that's part of their thing is like, is there a way to give people a treat that's kind of like it's chocolate, but it's good for you. It has this thing in it that's like really, really good for you, and kind of gives you a license to kind of indulge, but also do something healthy. So we're working with them.
Something good.
So we're working with them on segmentation, targeting, positioning, messaging this term.
And what kind of like applicable things are you giving to that company? Is it just data? Is it if you hire a designer to build your website? Look at doing things that are more like this.
Yeah, it's all of the above. I got 210 students, and each of them, there's 30 groups of 5 to 7.
Shoot.
And yeah, they're going to produce basically a PowerPoint deck that says you should do X, Y, and Z. But it could be across their Facebook platform. It could be across their messaging on the website. It could be a lot of different areas that are open to whatever the students are interested in. So it's going to be pretty cool at the end. They're coming back on April 30th, May 1st, so the students can present. So in my class, by the way, I don't do tests. There's no tests. There's only
my kind of class.
It's like I don't want to waste your time testing, Nathaniel's memory. Can you put stuff in your head and then write it down?
I already forget the S stands for segmentation.
Yeah. Well, maybe I need to test you. No, but so we do, to your point earlier when you were asking Nathaniel, we just try to do applied stuff. So we'll do the group project as sort of like the final exam. And they'll present, the company will come, and the students will present for them for 20 minutes, each group. And the company will help me grade the projects.
How do you flunk? Is it just you just don't show up?
Yeah.
You just don't do any of the work?
Yeah, it's hard to flunk. I mean, I'm a pretty reasonable dude. I understand that folks, people are busy. I understand they're doing a million things. So it's hard to flunk my class. You've got to basically just not show up.
What happened to your goatee, by the way?
Yeah, you know what?
I saw you growing it out. Yeah. I've been thinking if you Google UFC ref Mike Beltran. He has this handlebar mustache that goes down to like his waist.
Oh, wow.
It looks sick. I'm in the process of trying to convince my wife because I want to grow it.
That's
out. It'll probably take me 3 or 4 years, but down past the waist, you just have this mustache. You like rubber band it together or whatever.
Nice.
It looks awesome. Plus, just from a branding standpoint, that guy who does the videos online about tech and design, and he's got the mustache. You know who I'm talking about, the mustache guy. Because right now I'm just like, what am I? You know what I mean?
Totally.
I got the big nose.
I think you think about these aesthetics when you're building a brand. I was doing the goatee for a while, Nathaniel, because I kind of was, wanted a little bit of a different look. There were no other professors that I knew that, and then it allows you when you're teaching to kind of do this.
Yeah, right. You always look more intelligent.
But I decided to cut it though because it turns out this Saturday I'm doing I'm giving a TED talk. So so someone who advised me said, listen, if you're going to do a TED talk and you're going to put the TED talk on your website, for the next 5 years, then you want to think, do you want to have this for the next 5 years? And I was probably going to
grow
cut
it back in a few months.
Yeah.
What are you doing the TED talk on?
So TED talk will be on something called identity loyalty. Very much consistent with what I've been sort of describing with what I study in my research, and basically, but talking about marketing. See, here's the thing, Nathaniel. People like talk about marketing like it's an evil thing, like it's getting consumers to buy stuff they don't need, and manipulating people. And marketing is evil and
gotcha.
Bad.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So my talk's going to be about, marketing is like anything. You give it in bad hands and it can be used for evil, but it can also be a very powerful source of inspiration and motivation. And so I'll be talking about like brands as a source of power and empowerment for people. Like, how do you create like a health identity through brands? How do you create like a professional identity through brands and things of that nature? So trying to put like a bit of a positive spin on marketing.
All you got to do is figure out a nice clickbaity title, and you'll have one of the most popular TED Talks
there you go.
on their YouTube channel.
That's right. And apparently I also need like I need a shortcut button with text, right?
Yeah.
This is
Well,
what we have learned
it's-
from
yeah.
the great conference, right?
That's pretty cool. Is it going to be TED here in Philly?
Yeah, TEDx. Yeah, so it's not full time. It's not big stage TED. It's TEDx Penn. So it'll
Okay.
be here over in the Annenberg Center here. on
Hey, that's
campus.
right. You know, better than TEDx my living room.
Yeah, there'll be probably like
'cause nobody's
1,000 people there. Yeah, so it'll be
That's
fun.
super cool, man.
Yeah, it'll
That's
be
really
fun.
neat.
Yeah.
So what's been like the biggest? I don't know, because you definitely strike me as somebody who your classes are a little maybe unorthodox,
Yes,
right?
they are.
Maybe unstructured in a good sort of way.
Yeah,
I view unstructured as allowing creativity to live and breathe.
For sure.
Right? What's been like the biggest obstacle to overcome? I mean, you're working here at an Ivy League school. I'm sure you got centuries of ideas,
Yeah,
right? The
yeah.
way things are supposed to be,
Yeah.
but the way you think things should be maybe is not the way that, you know, Jack whoever down the hallway thinks things ought to be.
Totally.
So has there been any stuff like that you had to work with or convince people internally, or is it kind of like, have at it, bro?
Yeah, I mean it's very entrepreneurial. You know, it's a challenge here. You know, I'll be absolutely blunt about it. Like being one of maybe now 7 black people here out of 240 professors is challenging.
Kenneth.
Yeah,
He's an awesome
exactly.
dude.
He's gone
Yeah.
though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. When did that happen?
Yeah,
I
this
guess-
about maybe last year.
Talking about Kenneth Shropshire, who's
Yeah.
a sports
One of your
law-
clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah, he's at Arizona State now with his center
Wow.
for like the official Adidas Center for Sports Management or something like
He's
that.
all about that. He's such a great guy,
He's a
man.
great dude. One of my mentors here. But I remember showing up in 2000, 18 years ago, and you know, but the numbers were about the same then as well. But I would get comments on my class evaluations that would say things like, going back to your rate your professor comment, but would say things like, "Wow, you know, you're so articulate."
Yeah,
You
so,
know,
so
it's like,
smart
what-
for a black
I
guy.
know. It's like, what did you think I was gonna like come in with my pants down and like bust out into a rap or something? You know, so that's a challenge. I mean,
because that's next week.
yeah, that's right. That's next. That's right. That's the positioning lecture. You know, I'll be waving a towel and I'll have some gold teeth. Yeah, that's funny. I'll bring everybody in the class some watermelon and chicken. But anyway, so you know, so that's a challenge. And you know, quite honestly, Nathaniel, I can't do certain things that my white colleagues can do in the classroom and get away with it. You know, so I can't beat them up in a certain way. Beat them up being like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can't.
I figured since you were a black guy, you actually meant physically.
Yeah, right. Which I would love to do actually sometimes. You know, when I get these late assignments.
I know a professor from another university who I'm not going to name, who the kind of dirty laundry they air on their Facebook, I don't know how they
wow.
still have a job. Don't get me wrong, it is hilarious looking at it from the outside
That's
in.
funny.
But I don't know if he just doesn't have people who work at the university kind of checking out what he's saying, but it is hilarious.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. You know, I'll tell you this, Nathaniel. It's hard. Race is hard. Gender is really hard. Gender is very, very hard. There's a recent research study that came out that basically shows that female professors, it's very interesting. Female professors are rated lower, conditional on the same content. They are also someone did a text analysis on the open-ended comments about comparing female professors and male professors, and female professors are less likely to be called professor in the open-ended comments, more likely to be called teacher, and more likely to get comments that are about their looks, their personality, compared to men who are more likely to be called professor and get comments about, you know, how good they are, how quality of the competence.
What do you think that is?
Yeah.
What do you like? Is it a cultural thing? Is it
Yeah.
human nature? Is it? I mean, we tread into some crazy
Yeah.
water when it comes to some of the potential social justice warrior backlash type stuff. But if you're interested in actually solving an issue, you have to be able to talk about it,
You
right?
got to, absolutely.
And because I like, there's a guy James Damore out of Google who published that thing about female engineers or coders or
Yep.
whatever.
He was out.
But I kind of thought he made some valid points.
Yep.
I didn't think he was coming across as crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
you can say I don't agree with what you're saying, but he seemed pretty reasoned, and he was citing what he was talking about.
Yes.
So, is it something where because you have somebody like a mother in your life, you just it's bred into, or not being bred into you, but just like do animals look at a female animal different than a male? I don't know. Like, where does it come from?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because I look at myself, I know, like on the inside, I know how I think about men and women, right? And I don't think I would intentionally not refer to a female professor as professor.
Right.
However, data might show that I do that if I was put into a situation where that took place.
Correct. And the argument isn't, I think to your point, Nathaniel, the argument isn't that it's intentional. The argument that it could be implicit.
Right. And that's where I wonder, like, what drives that?
Yeah. I think a lot of it's, it's nature nurture, so it's going to be hard to disentangle that. But I think that, we are raised to sort of see in previous roles in society, women as nurturers and caregivers and things of that nature. So it's interesting because female professors are more likely to be asked to do things from students, like, can you help me? Can I come to office hours? Can I? And they're pressed for their time more often than male professors. Like, students are more likely to go to a female professor and request something, and when the female professor says no, more likely to push back and say, well, why not? Right. As opposed to a male professor who won't get asked in the first place. Yeah. And if he is asked and he says no, that's the end of it.
Right, you assume that.
But I think part of it comes from,
it is interesting. Well, and I've noticed, just totally anecdotally, because I haven't done any research on it, I've noticed a lot of the women in my life are way more willing to go and ask for help. Whereas I sit there, I'm like, I'm gonna figure it out myself. I'm not, even like dumb stuff like, hey, could you tell me what aisle the balsamic vinaigrette is in, or whatever, you know what I mean? It can be the most dumb, mundane, it takes 30 seconds, just go do it.
Right.
I forget about whether I'm asking a man or a woman. I find that myself as a guy won't go and ask for help because I want to figure it out. I can handle it, I got this.
Yeah.
Whereas, my wife, she'll ask anybody anything at any time if she needs something. Almost to the point where if I'm with her, I'll just be like, let's just figure it out. You know what I mean? And she's not the only one. I mean, she's just a very, easy to grab at example because she's right there.
Gotcha.
And I've often, I've just personally thought about, I wonder what is that dynamic where she's so willing to go out there and be a part of it. Like, I will make conversation with anybody about anything. I got pulled over the other day and I told the police officer to his face I wanted to punch him, but I couldn't because he had a taser. And he looked at me like, did you really just say that to me? And then he started laughing. And then we started talking about the guns in his car and what it's like to be a cop and all this stuff. We had like a half-hour conversation. And it's like, I'm not happy with what she just did to me, but I'll still sit here and have a conversation. I'm going to make it worth the money I'm about to pay.
I would not have done that.
Right. Well, and that's
that would have been bad. That would not have ended well for me. Just FYI.
Right, and it's stuff like that that I wonder. It's not that I'm not willing to go out and have conversation or even risky. Like, that to me is the epitome of risky conversation.
Totally.
Like, you could take the taser out and use it on me, and be like, son, I'm going to show you. You know what I mean?
Right.
But there's a part of me where it's like, I don't care. I mean, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, we are living in a world now where, to your point, going back to this Google employee that was dropped like a ton of bricks, it's like companies are nervous. And they're
is that Google trying to protect their brand?
Absolutely.
In the face of what isn't an unreasonable, it's an emotional, like an emotional outburst leads to something like that when the reason behind it is from everything we can tell at this point in time seems to be pretty reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely. And when, if someone comes out and says, I'm going to accuse this person in your company of harassment. Yeah. Like, they're basically now the rule book is, well, we'll throw him out, him or her out, throw him out, and we'll investigate later. Yeah. Because if it does come out that this happened, then you're still gonna get a lot of
and you're really gonna look bad. Like, why didn't you get rid of him right away?
Yeah.
It is difficult because you're innocent until proven guilty, but in a corporate environment, it's the rules are what the rules.
That's right. And in the court of public opinion too.
Right.
It's like,
well,
that's different thing.
Try to apologize to a mob and see how that works out.
Right. That will end badly as well.
So you're pretty into fitness.
I am.
Totally changing.
I love it.
So I always describe when I'm talking about you to other people. I always describe you as one of the only people I've ever met in my life who can lean forward, because I'll never forget, we were down on Kelly Drive doing a shoot with your cycle, and you had, I don't know what kind of shirt it was. I called it the ab shirt because it just had a cutout just to like show up for people that have abs, right? The only person who can lean forward and still have his abs.
That's funny.
Because normally you lean forward and you get just a little blurble. You know, even if at normal, you still got this.
And dude, are you sure you didn't Photoshop those abs in later?
I might have accentuated them a little bit.
I still get compliments on those pictures that you took. I'm still to this day. People go to my website.
That's crazy. Because I look back. To be honest, I look back and I'm like, I could
they're not that good.
Really?
Like technically,
Interesting.
I mean, of course they're great because you're in them.
Interesting.
But
Nice save.
but from a technical standpoint, there's a lot I would do differently now.
Interesting. I just had someone last week say, I went to your website. When was that done? I said 2013. It's like, that was one of the most best, that was the most incredible websites I've ever seen. Who did that? And I give them your story.
I'll be honest, on your website, because I designed your website.
Yep.
2013, is that when it was?
2013, did all the pictures.
It still drives me crazy that there's a search bar that's like 1 pixel off. And I got to go back and look at it, because I'm sure there's one little thing I can tweak now. But at the time, I'm sure I was slaving over a hot computer, like, how do I get this 1 pixel into place?
See, you're pointing to something really interesting, Nathaniel. It also relates to my love of fitness, and that is the perfection. Like, one of the reasons why I work out is, like, I'm trying to be better at stuff I do that has nothing to do with working out, and that helps feed that. But to your point, I mean, when we did that photo shoot, that was a fantastic photo shoot. I really wanted to sort of say that, I may not look like this forever. I may not be super fit forever. Let me capture this so that people who know me can still, I can always say, you know what? I used to be fit, even if one day I'm not fit. So.
And I photographed a woman who, she was diagnosed with cancer, and she knew things were about to get pretty bad.
Oh, wow.
And she wanted pictures kind of before things started going downhill, because she's like, I want people to know who I was. Yeah, right. I was. There's been that, and on the flip side, I photographed a woman, a family, in fact. I believe she had just finished beating cancer.
Okay.
And she's like, I beat cancer. I had a pair of twins. It's a year later, and now it's time for my celebratory photo shoot.
Oh, nice.
And it was this kind of thing where it's, I can lock this moment right here forever. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I love fitness. There's something about, here's the thing though, I grew up, sort of, my mother took us to, I have a sister who's older than me, 18 months older than me. And I remember being 14 years old and being taken to a Bally's to get a membership. My mother was just into this thing. She was like the old Jane Fonda with the leg warmers, and she was like the aerobics, the aerobics queen and all that.
Richard Simmons.
I know, right? So she's gonna get her workout in. So she drug us along, and we got the family membership. And I'll never forget this, Nathaniel. I remember the smell of the chlorine and the silver Nautilus. Nautilus was big then, like the machines were first came out.
Yeah.
And I remember just that moment, like sort of having that identity of like, oh, I'm going to be a workout person. And I remember just kind of going through life. That was who I was. And it was like several years later before I met people who like didn't work out during lunchtime. I thought that was just everybody. I just thought that's what you do. So,
going to the gym after lunch?
Yeah. Like, what are you talking about?
Who's Jim?
Right.
New employee?
Exactly. So going back to this notion of identity, it just was part of who I was, and so it's easier for me to maintain it only because it goes so far back to my 14 years old doing that stuff.
Is it something you think you're just going to do till the day you drop dead?
Absolutely, to the day I drop dead. I may be actually doing an actual curl when I drop dead.
They come in, rigor mortis is set in,
right? Exactly.
35-pound dumbbell in your hand.
I love the way it makes me feel though. The endorphins are fantastic, and it just this too.
Yeah, I always tell people,
sets your day off.
Because there are people who are like, oh, I love the results from working out, but not working out. And I'm like, I think either you're not working out right, or maybe you haven't really worked out much. Right. You see people who are working out, and you're like, oh, I'd like to look like that. See, for me, it's not even about the way I look. The moment that it sort of clicked for me, I was like 14 years old. There was this old crappy community center. I grew up in a pretty bad neighborhood. There was this old crappy community center, and I would go down there. I was like 13 or 14. I went into the weight room there, and I started lifting. And within a few weeks, there were some other kids in the neighborhood who, we played basketball together. We did all these different things. And I'm like, hey, let's try to bench press. And I smoked them all.
Really?
And I was like, as a 14-year-old, I was like, all right, And like, so for me, going to the gym has never been about getting in shape per se, but about getting stronger.
Gotcha.
I don't care if my tricep is this big versus my bicep that big versus, I've got this much body fat. I mean, maybe there's a small part of me. Yeah, would I rather be 350 pounds or 180 pounds?
Right.
I'd take 180, right?
Right.
But there's also health benefits to it.
That's true.
But it's mainly about, I'd rather be 240 and able to lift 600 pounds over my head than 180 and struggle to, press 130.
Right.
I'm not saying I can lift 600 over my head.
Wow.
I did squat 500 once.
Wow.
Once.
How far down did you go?
not far enough to tear my knees up.
Okay.
But
it was a legit. It was a legit rep.
It wasn't like butt to the ground.
Gotcha.
But it was legit enough for me. I mean,
Close
just
to
lifting it
parallel.
off the rack felt legit enough to me.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's a
I've
lot,
gone
man.
further than most men at this point.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I
man.
did put it on camera. I filmed it on my iPhone. I got to find the old video. It was my old iPhone, but purely because I figured if I blow both my knees out or break my back, I at least can make some money off the YouTube video. No joke. It's like 100% of the reason why.
That's funny.
Exactly why I filmed
Funny.
it.
So
But
your
that-
thing was about strength.
It was all about strength,
Uh-huh.
and it was and growing up. Having worked out from a relatively young age, I got a Bowflex and put it in my bedroom, and I'm gonna work out. And it was, I would go out and do some construction stuff with my dad, and there'd always be people like, whoa, you can handle lifting that? And like as it's 14, 15, I'd be like, it's no big deal. But in my mind, I'm like, hey, I can lift that, can I? You know what I mean? There's always like that part of it.
Right.
But no, it was always just about the strength for me. I don't know. I looked at it like I want it to be something usable. I always had this, like, I don't know if you call it a fantasy, but I always wanted people to grab like a 200-pound person by the scruff of their neck and lift them up and press them against a wall. I thought the day I can do that, I will have achieved the goal that I've set out to do. As like bizarrely random as that is, I don't go around grabbing people.
Right.
But I just thought if I ever need to,
Yeah.
I at least know I could do it.
Interesting. Yeah.
For whatever it's worth.
Whatever it's worth. Yeah. No, I love it. I love just the way it sets your day off.
Yeah.
It puts you in a mindset to be productive. And I love the way that
for sure.
feels.
Yeah. It's a whole. You can wake up drowsy, go to the gym, work out for 20 minutes, and you're set.
20 minutes.
Yeah. And try to work out for more than that, but
Yeah.
hey,
Baby steps.
a
though.
step, right?
Yeah. All right. That's
Toe hold becomes a foot.
That's right.
That's pretty cool.
Awesome.
So we're getting ready to wrap this thing up. The
Okay.
question that I try to ask every guest.
Oh wow. Wait a minute. Now I'm getting nervous.
The question I try to ask every guest.
What is the meaning of life?
Well, that too. That's coming later. Do you have any irrational fears, phobias, things you're scared of, things you have terrors of in the night? As they can be as bizarrely random as you want them to be, but I expect no man has no fear. No woman either.
Yeah.
Harkening back to our earlier conversation.
Totally. Right.
No man has no fear. There's got to be something out there that
Yeah.
that you have, because I have a weird phobia. The one that because somebody asked me, what's your irrational fear or phobia? Mine's just bizarre.
Oh wow.
But it's not like heights or anything like that.
Okay.
But
Okay, now I'm curious. I got to hear this first. So mine
so
won't sound so weird.
my phobia is when a dog comes up to you, they always sniff your crotch. And I'm always
Wow.
waiting for.
I didn't see that one
I'm
coming.
always waiting for the wolf of Chernobyl to just go.
Oh my god.
And no matter how well trained the dog is, it just grabs and latches.
Interesting. Yeah.
And like I've had some kids, but I still want the option.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, interesting.
For whatever it is, it's this little like tick in the back of my head.
Interesting.
I'd rather jump off the side of the Empire State Building than, I mean, not like I see a dog coming up to me and I run, but I'm like,
You get
I
a
go to
little bit of
DEF CON 5.
Yeah,
I'm like,
interesting.
I'm keeping my eye on you, kid, and I'm
Right.
gonna, you don't,
Interesting.
hell hath not
Yeah.
seen wrath like
But only
this.
certain types of dogs, not like poodles, right? Poodles are
Anything that's getting up around there.
Interesting.
Anything that's getting up
That's
around
interesting.
there.
Like, you
'Cause
sense
it's
it, you feel
it's
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It's just the most random thing in the world.
That's interesting. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I guess my fear, I have lots of fears in terms of like, I don't certainly want to be bitten in the crotch by a wolf. I'll say that. But I guess my biggest fear is the fear of waking up one day and not really having a purpose. That's my biggest fear. In other words, like I have certain things I want to achieve, certain goals, passions I want to pursue, dreams I have. But every single day I get up, I feel like I want to do this. My biggest fear is waking up one day and not wanting to do it. And like, what would I do?
Yeah, what would you do?
Yeah,
Or you don't know.
I don't know. That terrifies me because it's sort of like, well, what is my purpose? What am I doing? And from a fear perspective, I think fear is very important because someone once said that that someone who is brave is not someone who has no fear,
Right.
but that courage is really the choice to do something that you fear, but that the thing that you're going to do that you fear is more important than fear.
I was just reading Jerry
Yeah.
Spence's book, How to Win Your Case.
Yeah.
The very famous trial lawyer, right?
Right.
He lost a civil suit in like 1969. Other than that, it's the flawless record, right?
Yep.
And he has a whole chapter in his book where he's talking about, it's such a good book, by the way. But he has a chapter in there where he talks about fear, and the fear every time you go into the courtroom, it's like we're doing battle.
Yeah.
And he kind of talks about fear as a motivator, but not really. He kind of talks like he's ahead of his time. You know what I mean? Like now, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm coming into my own as a young adult, where I'm realizing, whoa, people talk about stuff like this. But he's talking about this stuff. Well, I guess he wrote the book in the early 2000s, so not too far ahead of his time. But The way he talks about fear is really interesting in terms of, like what you said, you're not brave because you're not afraid of something. That just means you're an idiot half the time, right? If you're not afraid of jumping off a building, you're an idiot.
Right.
But if you have a parachute and you jump off the building, maybe jumping off the building's a bad. If somebody's holding somebody hostage and you run into the, like there's just recently there was that French situation over in Paris where the police officer turned himself in, knowing full well he was probably going to die. Right. But you release those hostages for whatever, 50 people or whatever it was, and I'll put myself in there. He did it knowing full well there's a high likelihood I'm going to die, and he ended up getting killed. Right. To me, that is such an epitome of bravery. You knew 100% what you were doing. And you still did it. Whereas if it was just like some bozo walking in there like, oh, take me,
That's right.
It's just you're an idiot.
Yeah, I think fear is a very important emotion. I think it's evolutionarily speaking, it's what helps us survive because we know what not to approach and what to avoid. But for me, this notion of fear is something that I experience. Like every time I walk into, I've been doing this 18 years. Every time I walk into the classroom, I'm a little bit nervous. I don't want to say I feel fear,
Can't
but
get
I'm
that
like,
second awful review on Rate My Professor.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I have to erase it. But I think it is a powerful motivator. And for me, like my biggest fear really is this idea of, not feeling like I have something that I need to chase. And I don't know what would happen if I didn't have that. Would I shut down? Would I turn into like an emotional, just kind of, what would happen? I'm not sure. And maybe part of my fear is fear of not knowing what would happen.
If brands go away tomorrow,
that's right.
What would I do?
What would happen if there were no Nike? I have no idea. But so that's kind of the way I think about it. More like more Maslowian, more self-actualization. Like what's my purpose? I always want to feel like, you probably feel this too. It's like you get up super early. You can sleep 2-3 hours.
I wouldn't say super early.
But don't you have in your mind? You have a purpose. You're like, here's what I'm going to do today. And here's why it's important that I do this.
Yeah, I mean,
why I'm passionate about it.
Yeah, every night before I go to bed, I kind of have a game plan of, well, on the macro, what I'm shooting for, even if, like the target's out there and I'm going to figure out the steps to get there kind of thing.
But why do you do that, though? Well, let me ask you this. How would you feel if you woke up and you didn't have that drive to do it? Would your identity be
I
gone?
would say buck up, buttercup.
Oh, is that
get
right?
Get back to work. I mean, that's probably what I would do. Yeah. Okay. And because I feel like you don't know how you're going to get to that target until a lot of times you've gotten there and you look back over your shoulder and it's like, oh, there were the I made that stupid loop there. What the heck was I thinking? That was kind of an idiotic
But are you afraid
move.
you're going to run out of targets?
No.
Okay.
No, because I feel like there's always going to be something that I can figure out how to do. Maybe it's I'm young and naive, probably, but
young and full of energy.
I feel like that's it. A part of my fear and like I remember telling this to my wife on one of the first times we ever got together. I would like to be a name that 500 years from now people know who I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because how many people can do that?
Yeah.
How many people, I was just talking to my sister about this on the drive down here. How many people know, how many Caesars? It was the Roman Empire, for crying out loud. Yet we only remember like the really spectacular ones.
Right.
Who was that one that was 3 back from the Caesar that got stabbed on the Ides of March?
Yeah.
Right? What about that Caesar?
Yeah.
Were any stories about him?
Yeah.
Cleopatra. Who was before Cleopatra? Who came after Cleopatra? Right? Where was King Tut?
Right.
You know what I mean? When did Tutankhamun show up on the scene? Right? So like we know the names, but what about the people around them? What about Tutankhamun's butler? He might have been a cool dude.
Right.
But yet we don't know anything about him. Right. He might have had the snazziest haircut literally in the history of the world. Don't know a bleeding thing about him.
Right.
And that's part of it. And also I don't want to be the guy laying in my coffin and people are just like, yeah, he lived his life, basic, so what?
Yeah.
Right? Like the so what?
You want to take chances.
Yeah, I mean, everything in my life. Dance on the edge between chaos and order. And that's where like the magic is in my mind.
Yeah.
That's
where the living happens.
Yeah, and I don't like anybody can live the boring, right? You can get up, you can do this, you can do that. You can take your t-shirt off like a normal person, or you can rip one sleeve up over your head just because it's a different way of doing things.
Right.
And I find myself doing things differently most of the time just because it's different.
Interesting.
Just because it's different.
You're a natural marketer then, because that's basically what a really good brand does, is to like differentiate itself, like do something completely different and unexpected.
And to be able to leverage it better than I do, maybe that's that's where I need your help.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. I forgot the 2 things I forgot to mention earlier on. Your daughter.
Yes.
You're one of the first people that I ever met who was teaching their child 2 languages right out of the womb.
Yes.
Now, I just recently was talking to somebody who was taught, I believe she was taught Dutch and English.
Oh, wow.
Right out the womb. And, well, not right, you know what I mean.
that phrase throws me off. It's like, wow. It's like, hand me the baby. Okay, clean it. Okay, now let's,
First lesson.
Yes.
She was telling me that she has looked into or done some research or something. Smart lady. Smart for a lady.
Right. It's interesting.
But I did refer to you as a smart guy too.
Yeah, you did.
So I do
check
it
the
to a lot of
tape.
people.
That's right.
She was telling me that kids who learn 2 or more languages,
Oh, yes.
they develop slower initially.
Yes.
But at a certain point, they
They
take off
accelerate.
like a bat out of hell.
Yeah.
And it's this trajectory that there's nothing else like it, like teaching your child 2 languages
Totally.
out of the gate.
Totally. Opens up their mind. It creates all these really interesting. The brain is wired differently from the jump, and so yeah, they'll actually end up speaking later, but when they do start, there is this like super amplified acceleration.
You're basically a foreign diplomat by the time you begin speaking, right?
That's right.
I mean,
that's
she learned Spanish and English,
Spanish
correct?
and English, yes. And now she knows a little bit of German, so she's working on some German as well, and she's working on a little bit of Japanese as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's gonna be a globetrotter.
Yeah, but she's interested. We got her a passport when she was 4 months old.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
and we've been
ahead of
taking
the
her.
game.
Yeah, she's like totally comfortable like being in different countries. I think that's important too, because I think part of what's important is to see that is to understand that the world is not centered around you. There's lots of different types of people, cultures, all that kind of stuff. And so we wanted to show her that as early as we could.
And people that are very proud of their culture.
Yeah.
I've often thought there are people who are willing to fight and die, lose their one life to protect a tract of land in Mozambique.
Yeah.
I would, you know what I mean? And they're not happy to do it, but they're very willing to do it.
Totally.
That idea of, getting back to the idea of identity,
Yeah.
attaching you to something that to me or you might mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Would I go to Singapore and die to protect some whatever on the dock in Singapore? No, heck
Right.
no.
Right.
I'd be jumping off the dock into the water looking for a boat to get the heck out of there.
Yeah.
But that idea
Yeah.
is something that is, to me,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not crazy, but crazy to me.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, this is part of the reason why I decided to study identity. I was one of these doctoral students. I showed up in 1995 to do the PhD, and I knew I wanted to study identity, partly because of what you're saying. It's just such a powerful motivator. It's hard to think of any behaviors that exist that somehow don't have implications for how someone's going to see you. And so how people self-regulate, manage that is something that I've been interested in for a long time and have been studying it for 24 years now. Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Awesome.
Also, your childhood. You grew up in Atlanta.
I did, Atlanta, Georgia.
How did you find your way up here to Wharton? I'm assuming you didn't put out a Craigslist ad and they were like, "There's our guy." That's
No. I was going to be a musician outright, and it's interesting. I missed that period because now musicians can, because of social media, can create their own following and actually make a living doing music now.
Yeah, like bands you never heard of are making a decent living.
Making a decent living. When we came out, though, it was like you basically had to tour, and you basically got up at noon, and you did the bar thing for free pizza and beer. And that's what I was doing. And
Good for a little while.
Good for a little while.
Not if you want to get married.
Not if you want to get married. Not if you want to eat. And so I sort of started looking for ways that I could be entrepreneur. Here's the other thing, Nathaniel. I hate bosses. So I don't want to. I hate authority. I hate
right
when
there with you.
people tell me what to do. I'll
Part
do
of the
the
reason why I
opposite.
said what I said to the cop the other day.
Yeah, right. Be careful though. That guy's got a gun and a taser. But it's interesting because I don't want to have authority. I don't want people to control my time. So it turns out that academia is this beautiful interface between entrepreneurialism but also structure. So it's like I can study whatever I want to study. That's the beauty of tenure. But the school gives me structure and support. And so I get to be kind of an entrepreneur of ideas, but still have a structure that's going to support what I'm doing. So I kind of fell into academia because of my desire not to have a boss and not to be told what I'm doing with my time. And so I went and did the PhD, and I came up here in 2000. To start the job here at the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School, and it's been a fun ride ever since, man.
Well, so you got your PhD down south?
Yeah, I got my PhD. So I was failing. I failed all my classes. Had Fs. I was on
like every good and successful person.
Yeah, right.
Fail, flunk, get me out of school.
Get me out of school.
Now
I hated
Bill
school.
Gates.
Totally. Yeah, right. I totally hated school. I was totally bored with it. It was awful.
That goes back to your hatred of authority, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just absolutely. And just sort of being told that classes were just not interesting. And so I was on academic probation. My dad pulled me aside and he's like, listen, you got to do something with your life. So I started.
That's a fun talk.
Yeah, it's a fun talk.
Listen, son, come here.
Yeah, that's right. Had that talk on the top of Stone Mountain. You know, your dad is like holding you over the edge, and it's like, that's your life, son. What are you gonna do? It's like,
see,
I'm not gonna jump.
I envy the fact that your dad was able to hold you out over the edge of Stone Rock by the.
That's right. By the collar, and it's like this was a very metaphorical experience for you. And then I turned it around, and I just started studying hard. I was at Georgia State University. I got my last year of doing a bachelor's of business administration. Got 4.0. That was great. And then I did two masters there. And I was just like, I love being a student. I look at myself like I'm a 23rd year student. And here's the thing, Nathaniel. This is probably similar to you too. I'll bet it's actually identical to you. Is that, I get up every day and I do something I love to do, and somebody pays me to do it, which is just crazy. It's
I find that I don't like. I need to force myself to stop at the end of the day.
Yes, that's the double-edged sword.
Yeah,
because when it's
if
not
I don't,
work, it's like you're doing you.
And if I don't, it fouls up everything. Because then it's like, wow, I just worked 20 hours.
Yeah.
What in the world? Now this is gonna mess up my schedule for the rest of the week.
Right? But that's the beautiful thing about it is when it's your passion, it isn't work. It's not being encoded in your mind as work.
Right.
So you need boundaries to where it's like, okay, now I got to stop this, be with the family, or whatever, so that you don't just become this sort of monolithic thing where you're just doing this one thing.
What was your dad like? Dad. Oh, I've heard of him before.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah, he worked all the time.
Yeah, he's that guy. He comes in every now and again. Has dinner from 7 to 7:09, and then he goes back to that thing and he's doing it in the studio there.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so I struggle with that. But at the same time, it's like I sort of pinch myself. It's like, wow. I get up and I read and I study things and I learn about things that I really am interested in, and somebody writes a check for me to do that. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and for myself, there's certain things that I try to do every single day. Like I just recently, a few months ago, started sketching, just because I'm terrible at drawing.
Dude, you're multi-talented.
And I just spent, it was like 15
what are you
minutes
not
a
gonna
day.
do? Like, I mean, what's next? Like, you're gonna be a rodeo clown for a couple weeks, and then you're gonna
I don't know.
I'm
I'm like a sponge. I just look at stuff and I'm like, I want to be better than most other people at that thing.
Interesting.
That's the way I look at almost everything in my life.
So, but it is a matter of perfection. Like once you find that thing, it's like I'm gonna be as good as this as I possibly can.
And then I'm ready to move on to something else. And it's still like I still love photography, but I'm definitely like. I don't know. I'm still very I love photography, but like the web design stuff, for a hot minute there, a few years, web design was like I loved it. I like it a little more than not liking it all right now.
Interesting.
Like I'll do it if I have to.
Gotcha.
I like the idea of being able to write code to make something move and do something that's kind of like, oh, I clicked a button here and something over there happened, right?
Yeah, right.
It's like playing the electric guitar where I strum here, but the noise comes out over there. How cool. So there's that aspect. But anyway, there's a number of things that I try to do.
Interesting.
And recently I started this drawing, and the sketches I can show you after we're done here. I can show you some of them. You can just see the difference between when I started, between where I am now. It's like I'm not one to toot my own horn, but the public reception has changed.
Really?
I'll put it to you that way.
There. You're like
I try to put it up every now. I have been over the last week and a half been kind of bad about posting regularly, but I'm still working at it. So that I've also tried to do a live show every single day, just for like 15 minutes on Instagram, because I've realized I'm a little afraid of getting on camera live. Now I'm 116 days in, and it's like. What is this that I have done? So I do that. I try to read every day. I basically have this big 3-hour morning routine. All these different things that I'm practicing. 15 minutes on this, a half hour on that. Going to the gym, things like that, where it's every single day. But I wouldn't be able to do that if I worked a 9 to 5 unless I was sacrificing my evening and getting up 3 to 4 hours early if I was commuting. So I understand that I'm in a good place in terms of being able to do something like that. And it's all because I don't have that boss.
Interesting. How do you make sure that the dad identity gets its due in your life? Because you're doing a million things, man. Sketching, drawing.
I guess I don't really know. I don't really know what the dad identity is, other than I try to be as open and not really hands off when it comes to parenting, but I try to be very open with what the kids want to do. I mean, they're still very much like, we're going to teach you this is right, that's wrong, do this, don't do that. Here's how you put your shoe on. You don't take a crap on the dining room floor. There's a whole separate room for
That's
that.
an important
so
lesson
it's
to
right,
learn.
exactly. So
You
I'm
need
not
to learn that lesson very early.
Right. I'm not like a jungle person when it comes to just, but it's also like, a few weeks ago, my daughter, it was like 11:30 at night. She woke up or something. She's like, Dad, I want to go to Walmart. I was like, all right, get your shoes on, let's go. And we just went to Walmart.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So it's just like stuff. And my wife maybe not thrilled about it,
Okay.
but I'm just like, she wanted to do
Wow.
it. I was here, so let's just go do it. That kind of stuff.
Oh, wow.
And it's just like very bizarre, spur of the moment kind of stuff, where she'll say something interesting or they'll do something. I mean, my son, I'm probably a little bit too hands off with him. I left him on the dining room table the other day, and he fell off and hit his head on the floor. So it's stuff like that where I still need to brush up. I'm cleaning up around the edges.
Yeah.
So the dad brand is
Yes.
it's in like an alpha phase.
Gotcha.
We're working toward beta, and finally
yeah.
by the third or fourth kid, we might be in full
Totally.
release.
Well, falling off the table on your head, that builds character.
Yeah, well,
That's what I heard. I don't know.
It does. It also can introduce some marital strife between the husband.
Yes, it can. It can. Yeah.
But it's no. So I don't know. I mean, when it comes to like my dad brand, I guess it's such an abstract concept for me.
Right.
I'm trying to take lessons that I've learned from my own parents and grandparents and stories I've heard from other people and not do those things. Finding that sometimes, bizarrely, I'm a lot more like my parents. Because as a kid, I'm like, when I grow up, I'll never do this.
Yep.
I will never do this. And then it's like, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
I'm doing that thing that I said I would
Yeah.
to myself. Well, maybe it's something I said personally, like, I'm never going to do this when I get older. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Darn it, I'm doing it.
Nice. Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't really know
Interesting.
what my dad brand is. I try to be. I mean, I'm not like trying to be the cool dad. I'm definitely. I've told my wife I'm gonna try to be the authoritarian in the family.
Oh,
I
interesting.
want my wife can be. She can be the one who supplies the shoulder to cry on.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna be very much the life's difficult. It's unfair.
Interesting.
Buck up.
Buck
Let's
up.
make this work.
No,
you know what I mean?
no snowflakes allowed.
Yeah, right, exactly. But like, I mean, even earlier today, we had the unexpected April snow.
Yeah.
And I went outside, I gathered up a snowball. I was like, this is like the perfect snowball consistency.
Yeah.
Brought it inside. My daughter, she's into this thing where she just scoops snow and eats it.
Uh-huh.
So I put it in a bowl for her. I put some strawberry syrup on it. I gave it to her. And she's like, she said, I'm living life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My wife isn't necessarily thrilled with it. But she also, I had to give her credit. She didn't like freak out about it or anything.
Gotcha.
But she knew she would never do something like that.
Gotcha.
So that's the kind of thing that I'm doing. I want to be,
A free spirit.
and very open.
Experiment.
I want to be very open. Like,
Yeah.
I want them to feel super comfortable coming to their father
Yep.
with a question or a
Yep.
concern.
Yep.
And also know sometimes I'm not going to get the answer I want.
Right.
Because I want to be the kind of person that's going to be, I'll tell you what I think.
Right.
But I also try to, at the end of every difficult conversation, there's always room for a compliment. And it just adds the little, I've stomped you, and here's the kind of, let's make it better. I'm not doing this purely punitively.
Right.
I want this to be a redemptive thing.
Right.
Even whether you're my kid or not, but especially if you're my kid.
Gotcha. Interesting.
So that's kind of, at least at this point, that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm 28 though. So by the time I'm 38, I may have totally changed and be like, kids, whatever. My dad brand is being fat and lazy. No, I don't think I don't know. I don't see myself.
I don't see
getting
that in your future, man.
What's your dad brand, and what is a dad brand?
Yeah, dad brand for me is like, it's interesting because when I had Zora,
daughter.
my daughter Zora Fabiana Reed, she's fantastic. But it's like the first child, I was just fascinated by the baby industry as a collection of babies are us. And this whole idea, the entire infant industry is built on fear.
Yeah.
It's this idea like, don't kill this thing.
Spend 50 cents.
Yes.
Gerber has a bottled
Yes.
water that's just distilled water.
Yeah.
It's just 50 cents more a gallon, but it's
Yeah.
got the baby face on
got
it,
the
so your
baby
kid's not
face
going
on
to
it.
drop dead when you give it to him.
Yeah, and I remember going in, being sent to get the stroller, and the strollers were aligned by price. So this one's,
right.
the $50 one, this is the $400 Bob.
Right.
And it's like, as a dad,
I see price. My
Yeah.
wife sees that's the least safe. This is the most safe.
Yes.
Right. And the
Right.
most expensive is
That's
most
right.
safe.
But what's interesting is, like, from a safety perspective, they all have to be the same level of safety.
Right.
That's interesting. It's like a bike helmet. You can get, all bike helmets have to protect your head. If you want a $600 bike helmet because it's a little bit lighter, you can have that. But I remember just sitting there thinking, like, what type of dad am I going to be if I'm trying to, like, cut costs over here? Like, who am I? So it's like they know that. So that they know that, I'm going to have this sort of.
So that's a problem for me because I'm 100% the cheapskate dad.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Oh, if I can save a nickel.
Even on the first one?
Yes.
Really?
We fought. I wanted just one of those cheap $10 umbrella strollers.
Really?
We ended up getting $180, some kind of fancy. It's got, all I know is it's got tires you have to fill with air.
Yeah.
Which I'm
a
just
little
like,
more work,
what?
right?
Yeah, well, not even that. It's just like how ostentatious, like what am I doing here? Am I showing off to like this is my peacock or something?
Sure.
I don't know. I looked at it very differently. I was willing to throw the kid on my back. Give me a piece of rope. I'll tie him to my back and we'll go to town.
Yeah, that'll build character. That and falling off the table, but tying the kid on your back.
So
but
I am very proud of the fact that despite seeing moderate success with my business, I am still very
dad oriented.
Penny pincher.
Oh, penny pincher.
And it even carried through to my dad brand, so to
Dad
speak.
brand, okay.
But I wonder if my kids will know that. Like, Dad, you got the cheap this, you got this. I'll be like, I got the more expensive one, yes, but it's only because it was for 80% off.
What do you think is going to happen when? Let me ask. When and if they show up to school with the cheap stuff and the other kids?
I'm going to homeschool them.
Oh,
I don't want them going to school.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't like the whole. Just that whole environment, to be honest.
Okay, interesting.
But like when they're hanging out with their friends and they've got the cheap clothing.
Yeah. A lot of peer pressure around that, right?
Well, and that's the thing. Like I don't like peer pressure, but I do think peer pressure is valuable for certain things, obviously, because you're not going to poo on the dining room floor, partially out of peer pressure, right?
Yes.
So it does teach some valuable lessons. I don't know. I don't know what I would do.
Yeah.
I guess I would have to have the kid come home crying, and it depends on if it's my son or my daughter.
Yeah.
Because my son, it's going to be like,
buck up, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be like, I have a dirtier shirt that you can wear next time.
That's funny.
Whereas my daughter, I might kind of be like,
yeah.
let's
let's
take some karate classes.
No,
I don't know.
I teach you an armbar.
I don't know.
You mentioned UFC,
exactly.
right?
Jiu-jitsu. Let's do some jiu-jitsu. I don't know. I really don't know what my response would be. I would have to figure. I'm not sure, but that's a good question.
Yeah, it's hard to construct a dad brand.
I definitely treat my kids differently than I ever thought I would treat anybody ever.
Right.
Because it's a different ball game.
Different ball game, man.
That being said, I was also told before I had kids, oh, you wait till you have kids. It's this thing. You're never going to feel anything like it, yada, yada, yada. And I had the kid, and I'm just like, all right, I'm ready to go back to work. Literally the next morning. My daughter was born on a Sunday afternoon. The next morning, up and at 'em.
Wow.
I was annoyed with her the night she was born because she was crying so much at night. I'm like, oh, would you please shut up?
I got to get up in an hour.
This is not going to work.
Interesting.
When you're 30, if you keep crying like this, you think you're going to get your way?
Yeah.
Well, maybe nowadays, but
you're kind of hardcore, man. That's nice, though. I like it. I like it.
There's definitely room for a little tempering in there, but I'm working it out. Working it out. I can see that I need it.
Yeah.
But then there's other times where I feel like I'm way too emotional.
Interesting.
So I don't know. I fight. It's like this
balance.
internal battle with myself.
Yeah.
And part of it is I also, here's another thing. I try not to make decisions based upon what the people around me expect.
Okay.
Because I did that I can't really say I did that for a long time. I've done that about certain things, and it's just crashed and burned every time.
Interesting. What's an example of that?
An old ex-girlfriend.
Okay.
And I should have approached things in a very specific sort of way.
Okay, got you.
But I pulled a lot of punches that nowadays I'd have just let loose, a la telling the police officers that I wanted to let loose on him.
Gotcha.
But, things that I would say and do now that I was just like, I can't do that. I was like paralyzed.
Gotcha.
And it was fear, but fear that I was not acting on at all. It was just this fear for the sake of being afraid to do anything and being in this position where you feel like you couldn't do anything. Yet I wanted everything to change, but I felt like I couldn't do anything.
Interesting.
And it was like when that situation ended and I shed that situation, so to speak, or did someone say she shed me?
Depending upon your point of view.
Right, exactly. So. When that it was a seminal moment in my life. Oh. It has changed everything about that. And there was something else that happened at the time too. I had a nephew who passed away. That had happened shortly before that happened. But the kind of the conglomeration of those two things happening in like 6 to 8 month period of time, whatever it was, changed everything.
Interesting.
It very much changed me as a person.
Interesting. And so the new approach is like just absolute transparent, open communication at all times.
And it's don't like walk up to a woman and be like, wow, I've seen more attractive faces on a horse, right?
Right.
I wouldn't say something like that.
Right.
But if she asks,
then I will say I have seen more attractive faces on a horse.
I have told, there's situations where I put myself in hot water because there have been females in my life who have asked questions. However, I do also know a girl who asked me something. I said, you could probably stand to lose about 100 pounds and maybe you should go to the gym. But she did it, and she has totally turned her life around in terms of that now.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't take credit for it, but I still like to maybe think that what I said to her had something to do. Because you had that moment where somebody says something to you and you're like, never again will somebody say that to me.
Right.
And if I can be the pad that you want to hate on and I can absorb that hatred from you initially, that's fine, because I feel like I can deal with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
How
totally.
dare I go and expect something of somebody else when I'm not willing to stand there and be sort of the barrage, the dike, if you will, taking those ocean waves, you know, being pounded against it.
Totally. I think that's an interesting point that you're making, Nathaniel, with respect to like the parent brand. Let's pull it back a little bit more abstractly. I fear that I try to raise Zora to not be a snowflake, to be able to hear opinions that are different from hers and not fall apart and need safe spaces and
be
all
able
of
to
this kind
say,
of stuff.
I hear what you're saying,
I disagree with you,
but you're totally wrong, and here's why.
I totally disagree with you,
Right.
and that's fine. And
Yeah.
so that's a you know, and to your point, I really like this idea that I'm also trying to instill in my child as well. Is like, listen, life isn't fair. That's not a negative statement. That's just a truism.
Yeah.
And you know, everyone's not going to get a trophy in life. So you know, you have to live with trying to do your best. And if you're not your best, and you don't win that particular time, well, you got another chance you can do it, right?
Yeah, and I think being able to honestly assess yourself, be like, I need to do better. Stop blaming the people around you.
Yeah.
I need to do better. And like you said, not everybody in life gets a trophy. Cool, man. Hey, I appreciate it. We're going to wrap this thing up.
All right, man.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure,
Thank you for being a guest.
I appreciate it.
Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, I'll catch you later.
Hey, before you go, thanks for checking out my podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe to the show using the iTunes link in the video description below. While you're there, I would love it if you would give this podcast an honest review on iTunes. The ratings and reviews are really cool to see. If you don't think the show is worth 5 stars, well, let's just pretend it is. Don't forget, new podcasts arrive every Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with an occasional surprise show on Tuesdays. Until next time, this was the Dodcast.